What's up, guys? So today's gonna be another different one. We're gonna do another soldering video. A couple weeks ago, right around Christmas, my sister came and asked me if I could replace the batteries in her Pokemon games. So we're gonna do that today. But I've never really soldered a battery to a Game Boy before. I don't want to risk breaking a Pokemon game, and I specifically don't want to risk breaking a Pokemon game that's not mine. So today I thought we'd use as a test subject a game that I still care about, but if it gets borked, it's a lot easier to replace. And that game is Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color. This game does not need its battery replaced, but a new battery is never going to hurt these games. So we'll get this thing open, we'll get a new battery in, and we'll get some practice so that way I don't destroy her Pokemon games when I go to replace those batteries. So in order to do this job, you're going to need a few tools. You're going to need your game cartridge that you're going to be replacing the battery in, obviously. You need whatever new battery you're going to put into it. The Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Color games, they take a CR1616 battery. That's what these are. However, the Game Boy Color games, Game Boy games, and I think the occasional Game Boy Advance game, you might be able to fit a larger battery into it, whether that be a 2025 or maybe even a 2032 if they'll fit. It's all in the open space that's within the cartridge. Because the 2025, the 2032, and the 1616, they're all 3-volt batteries, and that's the important part. You don't want to put more voltage onto something than it was designed for. Otherwise, you could fry whatever components are inside it. Ask me how I know that. I just opened up my sister's copy of Pokemon Red. The battery is actually the 2025, not the 1616. And I'd assume Pokemon Silver, yeah, 2025. You're also going to need a screwdriver. I'm using an iFixit kit because I really like this kit. For Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, you're going to need a 3.8mm game bit driver. I'll flash one of those across the screen right now. And for Game Boy Advance games, you're going to need a Y1 tri-wing screwdriver. We're doing Game Boy Color, so we just need our game bit driver. You will also need solder wick, actual solder, and a soldering iron. Links to all of this will be down in the description. Some optional stuff you might or might not want is masking tape and tweezers. These are all optional, but it might come in handy if you want to be extra careful, which I do. Alright, so we're gonna just take our game apart and take a look at that battery. There it is, right there. As you can see, the battery is just soldered to the surface of the board. This will actually make it relatively easy to get it free. Now, while the soldering iron is warming up, I do want to point out, be careful if you're soldering. This is very high temperature. You're dealing with melting metal. It is dangerous to say the least. Research proper soldering technique before you get started with a project like this. If you're going to go with a larger battery, another thing you might want is some side cutters like these. The tabs on the larger batteries tend to go out further than the ones on these smaller batteries do, so it's a good idea to nip those down a little bit, so that way they're not extending to places they shouldn't be. Alright, the soldering iron is hot, so what we're going to do now is we're going to punch in so you can see what I'm doing to this battery. We're going to take the tweezers I mentioned earlier. We're going to use those to help us remove the battery. So we're going to just grab onto that little post right there, get that melted, and that battery will lift right up. Hold it up until the solder freezes back. Grab the battery again, melt the other side. Comes right off. We'll just drop that there, and then we're going to go back and we're going to clean off these pads where the battery attaches back to. Now, if you have some isopropyl alcohol and a cotton swab, this is a good time to clean up these contact points a little bit. They do get a little dirty whenever you solder like this. So I'm going to do that right now. Alright, so now that the old battery is off and the solder points are clean, we're going to take those default closed tweezers and we're going to use those to hold our battery in place. And to get my battery lined up on the pads where I want it, about right there. Then we're going to take these tweezers, open them up, and that will hold it in place while we do our soldering. And much like before, like we learned in our last video, good soldering practice is to use the iron to heat up the points and then introduce the solder. Right, like so. Keep in mind, I am not the most proficient solderer. I'm sure there's better ways to do this. There's ways to at least make it look better, but I don't know how to do those. So there we go. That reattaches our battery to our board. So pop that free. I'll take these other tweezers and just wiggle it a little bit, make sure we're good. We appear to be good. I'm going to take a little bit of the solder wick and just clean up my joint a little bit, because as you can see, that's not the cleanest thing I've ever seen. So I'm going to take the solder wick and just kind of take the tops off of those little solder mounds. And again, if you have a little isopropyl alcohol, it's good to clean off those joints as best you can. Pull one clip free, pull one clip free, and there we go. Again, not the best soldering job, but for somebody who doesn't solder, not too bad. So we'll drop it back in the case. Drop it back in the case, plug it into the Game Boy, and see if it saves. So that's a good sign. We got a game. So I didn't destroy the game. The game still turns on. It did save, but now the big test is, will it save? Will it still be there when I turn it back on? And there we go. It's still there. So that was a successful fix. And there we go. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe has a brand new battery in it. But yeah, that definitely wasn't hard. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to bringing you guys even more videos like this in the future. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one, y'all.